one, Mr. Donaghy.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this morning I returned from a meeting of the Economic Summit in Houston. I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. Donaghy.
Following last week's murder conviction in Kilmarnock of a 15-year-old who was addicted to machine gambling, will the Prime Minister's government now impose the severest penalties on those who flout the law and expose the under-18s to the dangers of machine gambling?
Mr. Speaker, we have done our level best to increase the penalties for these things, not always with the support of honourable gentlemen opposite. I take note of the honourable gentleman's strong views that such penalties should be further increased.
Mr. David Amos.
I defer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Amos.
Whilst recalling that it was this government and the Conservative Party alone who supported the right to buy legislation which was successfully piloted through this House, is my right honourable friend aware that in Basildon we have sold 14,000 council, commission and development corporation properties to tenants? Would she now further consider enhancing people's opportunities for home ownership by extending the rents into mortgages scheme in Scotland to the rest of the United Kingdom?
Mr. Speaker, I am delighted that the government's right to buy legislation is doing so very well in his constituency as it is elsewhere. It gives a new opportunity for people to own their homes and to pass it on eventually to their children. With regard to the pilot scheme that we're running in Scotland and also one in Wales on turning rents into mortgages also in an advantageous way, the pilot scheme is going very well. When we have more experience of it, we'll look to see whether it should be extended further.
Mr. Speaker, is it not clear to the Prime Minister that what the Secretary of State for Trade and Industry has said to the Spectator cannot be unsaid, and that therefore he can have no place in her cabinet?
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend has expressed his very great regret and unreservedly withdrawn his remarks.
Mr. Speaker, hasn't the Prime Minister made it clear with that reply that the only way in which the right honourable gentleman can stay in the cabinet is because his views are her views?
No, Mr. Speaker, those views which have been withdrawn did not represent the government's views or indeed my own views. They did not represent the government's views.
But, Mr. Speaker, is it not the case that when, under the terms of collective responsibility, as everybody understands them, a Secretary of State expresses views strongly and graphically that are contrary to the views of the government, that Secretary of State is sacked? Will the Prime Minister not recognise that what the right honourable gentleman has said is not just deeply offensive to our allies and partners, but deeply damaging to our country's interests, and he must go?
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend has...
Order. Prime Minister.
My right honourable friend has expressed his very great regret and unreservedly withdrawn his remarks. They do not represent the government's view or indeed my own. I have always understood that it is the custom of this House, when remarks have been apologised for and unreservedly withdrawn, Order.
Prime.
And unreservedly withdrawn, Mr. Speaker, as they have in this case, that withdrawal is gracefully accepted.
Sir Peter Holden!
When my right honourable friend meets the European leaders in the European community, will she say to them that a country which controls its inflation better than any other by strict monetary policies, and a country which offers rapid economic growth to the benefit of the whole of the European community, including that of the United Kingdom, is a country greatly to be admired, and that West Germany plays an important and most useful role both within Europe and in the world at large.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, I said almost words identical to that at the economic summit, pointing out that Germany had in fact managed both to keep her inflation low, to keep her unemployment low, and her growth high, her investment high, her savings ratio high, and her exports high, and all of that was greatly to be admired.
Mrs. Margaret Ewing.
Number 3, sir.
Well, it'll take time out of the Prime Minister's question. If I can deal with it immediately, I will. Order! I need to take this if it needs my immediate attention.
The Prime Minister has told the House that the Secretary of State for Trade and Industry has apologised to this House. She has apologised.
No, order. That's not... No, order. Honourable gentleman, that's not a point of order for me. Order. The Honourable gentleman must sit down. Takes a lot of time out of question time. Mrs. Ewing.
3, sir.
Refer the honourable lady to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister not realise that she cannot, with one breath, talk about increasing international cooperation whilst retaining in her cabinet a Secretary of State who has been not only downright unneighbourly, but has cast a slight on the attitude towards the European community? Does she...
Order, order.
Does she not agree that this is the worst example of Little Englander behaviour we have seen?
Order! Now, order! It's very bad. Mrs. Ewing.
And
Order. I say to the government benches, I do ask them, please, to listen to the question.
And what will the Cabinet do to redress this situation?
Mr. Speaker, this government was very prominent in furthering cooperation at the economic summit in Houston to the benefit of each and every one of the G7 countries. I have nothing to add to what I have said about my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State's unreserved withdrawal.
Is Elizabeth Peacock.
4, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Peacock.
Would my right honourable friend agree that we should all welcome the fine handling by Mr. Gorbachev of his party's 28th Congress in Moscow? And is this not a pointer for the future for good international stability?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, this government has consistently supported President Gorbachev's efforts of reform in the Soviet Union. We most earnestly hope they will be successful. Clearly, his political reforms have already been successful and led to freedom of speech and freedom of movement and freedom to emigrate on an undreamed-of scale 2 or 3 years ago. At the Houston summit, we agreed that we could each of us give, indeed some were giving already, technical assistance and know-how training. And we have embarked upon a study through the International Monetary Fund to see what further help could be best given and the criteria which should be fulfilled before that help is given.
Ashton.
The real significance of the Trade and Industries Minister's comments this morning was that it reveals a deep and irreconcilable split on Europe in the Cabinet, which is now damaging Britain's interests, causing confusion in Britain's government's policy, and causing contempt for Britain abroad. Does she not realise that if she will not sack him, she condones him, and that her government remains in shambles for as long as he remains a member of it.
No, Mr. Speaker, those remarks did not represent the government's views or my own, and I have to say to the right honourable gentleman that Britain's influence and Britain's reputation were greatly enhanced at the Houston summit by the spirit of cooperation which we showed and by the efforts we made, in fact, to bring about a successful communique at the end of that summit.
Ivan Lawrence!
Decisions that the Shops Act is contrary to the Treaty of Rome. Would she consider introducing amending legislation on Sunday trading, preferably after the next general election?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable and learned friend asked a very bold question. I think that before this government introduces legislation after the next election, we should seek the assurance from those who previously opposed the bill that we have a compromise which could be accepted, particularly in view of some of the recent court cases. I think that would be advisable, and if my honourable friend would like to start collecting the voices and the views, I should be very grateful.
Dawn Primarolo.
Number 5, sir.
The honourable lady to the reply which I gave some...
Dawn Primarolo.
The Secretary of State for Department of Trade and Industry's track record...
Order. Dawn Primarolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State for the Department of Trade and Industry's track record of insensitive and outrageous statements on a number of issues is well known. Can the Prime Minister tell the House whether there is anything that the Secretary of State could say that would actually get him the sack?
Mr. Speaker, I have indicated quite clearly that my right honourable friend has unreservedly withdrawn his remarks.
Order.
When remarks are so unreservedly withdrawn, to accept that withdrawal gracefully. My right honourable friend can hardly...
No, order. Order. A few moments ago I had to rebuke the government benches. Now I must say to the opposition, they must let the Prime Minister have a fair say on this.
The right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, as I thought the right honourable gentleman knew, is still in Hungary.
Mr. Roger Moat.
Mr. Deputy, would my right honourable friend agree that following the great success of the abolition of the dock labour scheme 1 year ago, there is now an urgent case for following this up with a new bill, a public bill, enabling bill, to allow the rapid development of other port enterprises by the privatisation of the outdated trust port structures?
I think there's a very great deal in what my honourable friend says. The abolition of the dock labour scheme was a great success for the ports and the hinterland. I understand at the moment for other ports in the trust to be privatised, they have to go by the private bill procedure, which of course is very cumbersome indeed. And we are looking into the possibility of doing an enabling bill so that they could be the better, more easily privatised.
Sir John Reid, number 6.
Honourable gentleman to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Reid.
The Prime Minister aware that the fight for the steel industry in Scotland is concerned with saving Ravenscraig, a Motherwell steel plant, and not Ravensglass, a Cumbrian village which the Secretary of State for the Trade and Industry happened to believe when we met him. Is she aware that as part of that, Sir Kenneth Alexander has been nominated for the board of directors of British Steel? And although she could not, of course, endorse any particular candidate, can she testify to Sir Kenneth Alexander's fitness as a candidate, as a man of great learning, industrial experience, and much integrity?
I regret that I do not know the honourable gentleman, and it would be quite wrong for me to attempt to endorse one particular candidate because I was asked to do so. That is a matter for the shareholders of that company, as he has in fact realised, and it is for those who put him forward to testify to all of the things which the honourable gentleman has enumerated.